Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before we get into it with our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Tori Parella on the podcast. She's a certified nurse assistant as well as an NPC bikini athlete coming on all the way from Rhode Island to share her health and fitness journey with us and discuss all things health and fitness. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Tori, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate that. Now, to start off, I always ask this question no matter how many times I hear people saying, oh, you ask it way too much. What is the weather like today?
It's like 70, I'd say 78 out. It was very cloudy and rainy earlier, but right now it's beautiful, sunny, nice and warm.
Upper 40s, lower 50s here. So, I'm not even gonna, try to make it seem like it's better than it is. But, hey, it is what it is. But before we get into my weather woes, why don't you give us your backstory first off and, what inspired and motivated you to become a bodybuilder and how that led to where you're at right now?
So I was always an athlete growing up. My mom owned her own dance studio, so she kind of just put my sister and I into dance because she needed to watch us. um, so I started dancing when I was like 3 years old, and then I got into playing soccer, competitive soccer. I did gymnastics for a little while, but dance and soccer were definitely like my sports. And then, unfortunately, I was diagnosed with anorexia when I was 13. So from like 13 to like 20-ish, I was in and out of treatment centers, very sick. I was all over the place. I was in treatment in Arizona, Boston, New Hampshire, Maine. Yeah, so I was all over the place, and I missed a lot of like high school, and wasn't really able to be a teenager. I would say I missed out on a lot of opportunities and a lot of like normal kid things. But um, because I was so sick, I wasn't able to play sports. That was like one of the things that was taken away from me. And when I was 18, I started signing myself out of my treatment centers. And I feel really bad. My parents were definitely beside themselves, especially my mom. She didn't know what to do with me. I was definitely down a bad path. I was like destined to destined to end up in a bad situation, whether I continued to be an anorexic for a long, long time, or I ended up, unfortunately, being one of the statistics that pass away from an eating disorder. So yeah, I was 18 years old. I was signing myself out of treatment centers, just like not having a good time with that, struggling to really just like find a reason to get better. I was very angry all the time and just like in a bad headspace. And sports was like the only thing that like made sense to me. It's like what I was good at, and that's how I kind of got out of my nervous like energy and my anxiety. So they actually went to dinner with our next door neighbors who we were very close with. And Pierre Calabrese said to my parents, like, I know this is like really weird, but have you ever considered like getting her a personal trainer, and someone that could teach her how to, fuel herself properly, because she is such a good athlete and that's what she likes to do. Um, and my parents kind of like looked at each other and they're like, that's not what we were told. Like they were always told us like no sports, no extra activities, no exercising, that's not good for her, whatever. But they were like, you know what, we're willing to give it a shot at this point. So they came home that night, and my mom was like, I have a proposition for you. If you follow everything that your trainer tells you to do, and to a T, like no mess ups, no nothing, then we'll pay for it. But you have to do what they say. So I ended up meeting with a trainer out of Hampstead Health and Fitness in New Hampshire, which is where I'm from. And his name was Todd Hansen. And yeah, I started training with him 3 times a week. He gave me a meal plan to follow. And the rest is history.
That is awesome. And I mean, yeah, the moment that I saw you, I was like, oh, she probably has a background in dance with that. But I mean, you can just tell from some of the guests that I have on, you're like, oh, it's gymnast or it's dance
Yeah.
or it's soccer or it's something. So yeah, but I mean, I do got to ask, I mean, going from a background where you do have like eating disorders and everything, how did you deal with, going from the yin to the yang, basically, where now you're in a lifestyle where like you have to eat a lot of food to put on size. You have to, it's just a complete opposite. Did you struggle with that all mentally, or is it one of those things where you're like, okay, I did this for so long that I am so ready now to just do something that's the complete opposite?
Um, I do still like kind of struggle with off season, and I think that's something that people don't really talk about a lot in the sport. And it's very different for guys and girls. Like guys, it's like,
Guys, it's like feed me whatever you want. I don't care if I put on 50 pounds. I don't care. Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
and like everyone's like, oh, you look huge, and they're like, oh, thank you so much. Like I really appreciate it. And then a girl like puts on 10 pounds and like, you look massive, and you're like, like like you just get like upset about it, and you're like, and they mean it in a nice way. They're like, you look, your shoulders look massive and you look huge and your legs are big and all this stuff, but we like mentally take that and we're like, oh, we're fat, or oh, we're like, and we're already very sensitive about that subject. So I do still struggle, not gonna lie. I have gotten so much better, but I still definitely struggle with putting on size in the off season. I love the off season for multiple reasons. One, I like having a little bit more flexibility. Two, I love training heavy. I love training hard. I train with my husband, and that's like what we do together. We love it. And it is necessary. I mean, your hormones need a break. You mentally need a break. Your body needs to get back to normal. You can't maintain this forever. But yeah, I still definitely struggle with it. Prep and like that type of lifestyle, I think that it's just easier for me mentally. But it's one of those things that it's like a necessary evil. Like you have to go through it if you want to get better and you want to put on size and you want to continue progressing in the sport. Like that's what it takes. And I mean, when you get to the pro level, depending on the person, you don't really need to like put on a ton of size. It's more so like just like getting the muscle density and regulating your hormones and stuff. But when you're an amateur, it's like you probably need to put on a couple pounds per season. So
And I mean, this is also a sport of delayed gratification, which I bring up every once in a while. That I mean, like, you're not going to see results overnight. A lot of people get into this lifestyle because they see those fads where they're like, oh, lose like 30 pounds in like a week or something. And it's just like, it's not going to happen to you. And how do you deal with that mental side of the thing, too, where it's like, you can work your butt off, you can bust your butt for a whole year. And like you said, you might put on a pound or two of muscle. And it's just like, a lot of times people look at that and they're like, just putting in that much work for that little gain, it just shows, to me at least, it shows the dedication of the competitors. But how do you deal with that, knowing that like I can train as hard as I want, but the gains that I see are going to be incremental? You're not going to just go like one season like, oh yeah, look, she put on 15 pounds of muscle, really. And if she did, then I want to know, I'll sign up for whatever she's doing. So
what did you do? How did you put on that much muscle? It definitely is hard. I would say this past off season, I was probably the most comfortable I was in an off season. And it's funny because I think that I look a lot fuller. My muscle density is there. My legs are a little bit bigger. My shoulders are bigger. Like everything has like grown, but my stage weight is actually about the same, which a lot of people are like, how does that happen? But I think it just comes down to the maturity of the muscle, and like building muscle mass for different people is going to be different in general. Like I have friends of mine who go into an off season and they can build muscle extremely quickly, and their turnaround time is easier for them. But when they get into a prep, it's like they have to really grind. They have to like, their cardio is very high, their food is very low. I'm kind of in the opposite position. Like putting on size for me is usually kind of more difficult, especially in like my upper body. Lower body not so much, but prep for me is usually a little bit easier. Like, yeah, do I have days where I'm like struggling and I have my cardio is higher? Yes, but it's like the more shows that I do in a season too, like my body's already conditioned, so it's like we can increase the food, cardio comes down. But yeah, it's definitely a tough sport because it does take a long time. And I can remember being an amateur, well, I'm still an amateur, but like being a beginner and seeing these girls, and I was like, how do they look like that? Like, that's just wild to me. And they're like, oh, I've been doing this for like 7 years. And then I was like, oh, like I get it now. Like it just, your muscles goes for any sport, but your muscle is just not going to grow overnight. It's just comes with time. So
That's what really shocked me when I first like really did my research about the sports. That like, yeah, this is the one sport where as you get older, you get better. No other sport really has that where it's like, oh yeah,
yeah,
you reach your plateau. But yeah, I've had guests on there in their 50s and 60s, and it's like obviously they're not their best as when they were like 30 or 40, but it's like you still have
right.
that muscle maturity that still is there. But I also love to talk genetics on this podcast because oh my god, I hear this all the time. Oh my god, I want his arms, I want her abs, I want their back, and it's just you just want to strangle them because it's like you can
Yeah.
train just like someone, you can work just like them. It's not, you're not going to get the same results. I'm sorry, but on top of that, everyone always has that one body part when they start working out seriously that really really takes off that they don't have to train as much, and then everyone has that one body part that just drags behind it. They have to train to oblivion. What was one body part that took off for you, and what's one body part that you've had to just drag behind?
Oh God. I honestly I get compliments all the time on my arms, like not like my shoulder. Well, my shoulders now are better, but when I first started competing, I like didn't have like my shoulders were tiny, but my bis and tris have always been big, and I honestly don't train them. Like I now I've had to stop training them because my shoulders. I don't want my I don't want my arms to get.
The gym bro in me is like, that's blasphemy. What the hell is she doing?
I don't understand because I'm like I don't really. I do like one exercise for biceps. I do like one exercise for triceps. I'm like, um. So I would say my arms, and that sounds so like bro of me, but it's true. Like I don't. I get compliments all the time from like even guys. They're like, "How are your arms like so big for such a small person?" And I'm like, I don't know. I really don't. Body part that lagged. I want to say my back. Um, and my glutes too, I would say. I mean, like I had like the fullness there, but getting the tie-in specifically for like bikini, like getting that down for me has been the toughest thing, and it's still like a process. But that honestly comes down for me. That comes down to mind muscle connection and actually figuring out the exercises that make sense for me. And I can't stress that enough for anybody that has a body part that is lagging or they're just struggling. I would like absolutely just mind muscle connection, really figuring out the exercises that are going to work for you. Because I mean, there's some people that I'm friends with and they're like, oh, I love this for back. So I'll try it. And I'm like, honestly, I didn't feel that the way I was supposed to feel it. So I'm just not going to do it. So finding those types of exercises is really like probably the key thing. And then when I train, I actually sometimes will close my eyes and picture the muscle and like where I specifically want to target it. And I swear that's helped. So
Well, it's time for me to give you my 5 cents because my back was the one thing that really took off for me. And that's just because I was working in warehouses my all throughout college where you either got a really nice back or you quit. But I do rows like there's nobody else's business. I mean, and I'll even go out. I mean, I live in the land of 10,000 lakes. So, I'll go out on a kayak, every once in a while and just do that, That's, yeah, my back is always I've always said I could weigh 350 pounds and my back would still look nice. That would just be the one area that looks nice. But,
yeah,
I'm also 6'3", so my legs and my lower body, I am completely with you on that. I mean, I've made the joke a million times, but I could inject pure muscle into my legs, and they're not going to gain an ounce. I mean, calves don't even get me started. That's the number one genetic body part. I could do 10,000 calves. And being a dancer, I was like, okay, she probably has nice calves too. So I was like, but I mean,
it. I mean, they're
yeah.
there, but compared to like the rest of my legs, no.
I
So
know that's the one where you're like I could do 10,000 calf raises a day, and they're not going to gain an ounce. It's ridiculous. But before I get into my whole body shaming whole part where I just tear myself apart because that's what happens when you're in this lifestyle a lot. Why don't you?
yeah.
I mean, nutrition. We talked about it a little bit before, but I mean, what were some of the biggest nutritional changes that you made when you really started to take things seriously?
Um. So when I first started, I followed a meal plan. And I think I followed a meal plan pretty much up until I'd say probably like 3 years ago. Um, I had done macros before with one of my another person that I had worked with, not for bodybuilding. This is back when I did CrossFit for a little while.
Oh
Um,
God, don't tell me you were a CrossFitter.
it was.
I tried
I
that.
was
I tried
not.
that. I tried that twice. But being so tall, like being 6'3", you can't be a CrossFitter. Like it's almost impossible.
It's tough. The taller you are, the harder it is, and everyone thinks that that's like backwards, but it's not because you have so much more. to move the weight. Like yeah. So, but I did that for a little while. Not gonna lie, I actually did really enjoy it, but I didn't do that full time. I went to classes like probably I want to say like 3 times a week, and then I also still did like bodybuilding stuff. But I did that for a little while. But yeah, so I followed a meal plan forever, and then I started doing macros. But everyone's like, oh, macros, like so you can pretty much eat whatever you want. Not really. Like, I mean, if I wasn't in prep and I was in off season and I wanted to like eat something and it was like similar, sure, but I stick to the same basic foods. Like I stick to white fish, chicken, green vegetables, rice, oats, rice cakes. Like that's like what I do, even when I have like my own like meal plan that I come up with. So my coach now, Andrew Berry, gives me my macros, and he knows that I'm not going to eat Pop Tarts and burgers and French fries to fill my macros. Like he knows that I wouldn't do that, especially in prep. So I don't think I ever really had to clean it up. If anything, I think I struggled with allowing myself to eat and like not being afraid to eat more, if that makes sense. But yeah, sure, there's definitely times where I'm like in this past off season, like I struggled with just like making sure that I was like eating enough, because I would get to the point where I'm like, I'm not really hungry, but I'm supposed to eat, but I don't really want to because I'm not hungry and I don't want to force myself. But I mean, to put on the size and stuff, you kind of have to do it. But
I mean, before I get into anything else, I do gotta say my one biggest beef with CrossFitters is that like you talk to some of the pros in CrossFit and they're like, "How long do you train?" It's like, "Oh, I'm in the gym for like 8 hours a day," and I was like, "What? What are you doing? Like, what is that? Like, how is that like even a thing?" And then they're like talking about it's like, no, it's yeah. So I mean, it's just so much training, and it's like, and you see some of them like, yeah, I mean, I appreciate CrossFitters. I'm not gonna lie, I've had like a couple dozen CrossFitters on the podcast, just pure CrossFitters. I enjoy talking to them, but it's
yeah,
like it's a cult. Let's be completely honest. And I even tell them that when I have them on, it's like, okay, it's a cult. It's a healthy cult, but come on, like let's call a spade, really. But yeah,
like I have the only thing I had issues with, and I really do think that it
and
comes down to
injuries too. Yeah,
injuries was like the number one thing. And I was always like, still, I hear people say it like all the time, like, oh, I do CrossFit, and like, but I hurt my shoulder and I can't really do this, but I still go to CrossFit every day and I still snatch and I'm like, so why? Like, I don't know. But
maybe doing 1,000 kipping pull-ups in a row isn't the best idea for people out there, or just stuff. I mean, yeah, I mean, how any of them stay, injury, how anyone stays injury free even to compete in the games, hey, more power to them. But before I just this becomes just like a CrossFit hating podcast, because like I said again, I do not hate CrossFitters.
no,
I hate the training. I'll just be completely honest with that.
yeah.
But I mean, this is so much more. We talked about this a little bit, but this is so much more of a mental sport than it is a physical sport. And unfortunately, a lot of people on the outside will never understand that, because they'll just see the changes that you've made and they'll say like, "Oh my God, Tori, you look amazing," but they don't understand the mental changes happen as well, which is a million times more important than any of the physical changes. What has this journey been like for you mentally?
Oh goodness. I'm, there's been so much growth. Um, it's honestly been wild to, and I don't, and it's like one of those things that you don't really realize like how far you've come until you take a step back and you're like, wow, I really have come a long way. My mom says this all the time. She actually was texting me the other day and she was like, basically like, I'm just so proud of you. Like, and it's like times like that where you take a step back and you realize like how far you've actually come. But I mean, I went from being a 13-year-old who was refusing to eat and was miserable and angry and confused and didn't really know who I was without my eating disorder, because that was kind of like a comfort for me, to coming into my own, and even when I started bodybuilding, I was still very like new to the sport. I was like, I fell in love with it very quickly. I was all about it. I still am all about it. I say it all the time. Like I owe bodybuilding and I owe my like support system, I owe them my life. Like they truly dragged me out from the bottom and like just were like, you need to, this is what you're doing. Like this is your calling. I think this is what you're good at. But um it's wild because I used to think all the time like I can't do that. Like my trainer would be like, okay, we're gonna do this. And I'd be like, I can't do that. Before I even tried to do it, I would just say that I couldn't do it. And that doesn't just pertain to bodybuilding anymore. Like that pertains to life in general. Like I am not a confident person. It just doesn't come like naturally to me, but I have so much more confidence in myself because of training, because of going through the mentally tough times during off season, during a prep, during whatever, to know like what I'm capable of. And that has gone into other aspects of my life, like my job, going through tough family situations, anything like that. Like just knowing that I have the right tools in my toolbox. I think that that has been like the biggest mental growth is like just doing something, like trying something for the first time and being like, hey, I kind of sucked at that, but at least I tried. And I think that I owe a lot of that to like bodybuilding and actually like putting 110% into something and having it unfold in front of you is like one of the coolest things that I've ever experienced.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna live with everyone too. Like, I'm not the most confident person on the planet too. This is basically like a character that I've created for the podcast where this is like the version that I want to be, but like you find me at a bar on a Friday night and you'll see just how confident I really am and stuff like that. So it is, yeah, it is ridiculous. So yeah, I understand that, a million percent, probably even more. But I mean, also when we talk about this lifestyle, the number one thing that I would have never guessed in a million years before I started this podcast was the hardest thing for so many of these guests is posing. I mean, it's one of those things that is not talked about nearly as much as it should be, but it's, so many times I hear it that like, oh my God, that's the hardest thing. And what is your experience with posing been like?
So because I did come from a dance background, I think I learned quickly. Like I was able to pick up on the poses like rather quickly, and I think that just comes down to like body awareness. But I practice posing in I started practice posing this past year in off season, and I practiced in off season sporadically, but I really practice in my off season at least 1 to 2 times a week, and that was just practicing the walk, practicing being fluid, practicing watching my hand gestures, like little things like that. Because obviously, as you get leaner, like your body is going to look different in the poses that you have. But yeah, it's hard. Like watching the pros do their poses, everyone's like, oh, it's so easy. And then you go on stage as a first time competitor and you're like, I was so awkward. Like we all were. Like I'm not, but like it's hilarious because you think in your head like that you look so good doing your poses and then you look back at videos and you're like, oh God. But yeah, I still practice. Like I practice now in prep. I probably practice every time I send check-in pictures to my coach, which is usually 2 to 3 times a week. I practice my posing, but I also practice my posing outside of that in my routine. Yeah, pretty much every day, I would say. Just got to get it down.
Now, like you mentioned before, that you're not that confident. And I mean, bikini division, you have to have that sass and you have to have that flair that like a lot of people, for my opinion, you're just basically born with it or born without it. Is that something that you had to work on, or was that just something that like deep down you knew that you had that, or was that just your dance background really helping too? Because like as someone who proclaims that they're not that confident, I was like, well, you're a bikini competitor, so that doesn't really seem to mesh well then.
Yeah, I think that it is a little bit of. I definitely would say my dance background probably has carried me. But I forget what pro said this, and I feel bad because I say this a lot to girls that I pose with too. But she basically said, like, if your personality is like a cutesy, bubbly, light personality, that's what you need to do when you pose. If you're more of a sassy, like kind of, I like to strut, like look at me type like girl, then that's the way you need to pose. But you can tell when someone isn't being true to themselves in their poses because they just look a little bit awkward. So have been told that I'm a little bit more of like a sassy personality. I am very feisty. I can be a little bit, ask my husband, I can be a little bit sassy. So I think that that is the way that I like to pose. But yeah, just ever since I was a kid and being in dance, like we have to perform. So that's kind of how I look at it. Like I go out there and I put on a performance. But you do have to be confident because the judges can tell like when you're not. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be like so confident in like you as a person, but you need to be confident in your posing and your physique. So if you haven't been practicing your posing and you look unconfident in your poses, then it's going to show. But yeah, you don't have to necessarily be like the most confident person in the entire world, but you need to be confident in your posing and confident that you brought 110% to that stage, whether you think that you look the best than all the other girls or you don't, but you need to be like, because sometimes it honestly truly can come down to posing and presentation. So like you could see some girl backstage and you're like, holy cow, she looks phenomenal. And then she goes out there and she poses and she does not the best job. But there's another girl out there who her physique is good, but her stage presentation, her hair, her bikini, her overall look was like fantastic. So that's where it's like, it can come down to just posing.
And out of the poses that you do, what is your favorite pose and what is your least favorite pose?
Um, I would say probably my favorite pose would be, I would say my front pose. I like that one a lot. I feel like that shows off kind of everything that you need in bikini, like your shoulders, your waist, your glutes. Least favorite pose. I think the back shot is like probably the harder one for me, just because like you don't really know what it looks like until you take pictures or videos. And it's crazy how much just like your foot placement can change your pose. So again, if you're not practicing like where your feet need to be and you don't hit your pose right, it could change the entire look of like your glutes, and then you're like, yeah. So I would say probably back pose is like my least favorite / my toughest one to get down.
Again, just highlighting all of the little things that go on in this sport that no one really knows about, just when it comes to either lighting or angles. I mean, it's like there's so many little things about this. But when you're also walking on that stage, after putting in all this hard work on a prep, where let's be honest, anyone that's had like a super positive experience with prep, I want to sign them up for an insane asylum, because it's like, that's, you're not supposed to enjoy it, but like, what's that moment like for you when you step on that stage and you're finally able to show off all that hard work that you put so much time and effort into?
Um, I would say probably not until this past year did I really, the first time I ever, try and collect my thoughts. So I always get very nervous, like anxious to get on stage. Um, doesn't matter if it's for a local show, a national level show, even with dance. I used to get super nervous to get on stage for at least the first like number or the first time. And then after that I was like fine. But first time, I don't know what it was or what clicked for me, but now every time I go on stage, I started doing this in 2019, I think it was, at North Americans. I was like anxious to get on stage. I was so like pumped / nervous to get on stage, and I was backstage and I was around all the girls and I'm like, okay, like, it's kind of like do or die. And I was like kind of psyching myself out. And then all of a sudden I was like, hold up. Like, you have put in so much work and so much effort and so much time into this sport. Like, it doesn't matter what happens. Like, you've made it here. Like, just go out there and have fun. Like, and it's like, as soon as I said that to myself, I just got a whole lot less stressed. I went out there, I did my routine, whatever. I ended up getting first call out, and I ended up getting 8th place at my first national level show of that year. And I would say I call that my first national level show just because the first time I ever did a national level show, I knew that I was not ready, but I wanted to experience it and see and whatever. So I don't know. I guess it was my second one, but since I said that to myself, now that's what I say every time I go backstage. Like, doesn't matter what, like, all of these other girls work just as hard as you. Don't worry about them. Just focus on you. Like, have a good time. Go out there, perform the way that you want to perform. Bring that sass, that energy. Like, act like you own the stage, kind of. And that I feel like has made me a whole lot less anxious to get out there, and I don't psych myself out as much anymore. Um, because it is true, like we work so hard to get here. Like, just try to enjoy that day because it does go by so fast. Like, it is a waiting game. Like, not gonna lie, you're sitting back there, kind of like, when am I gonna go on? But it goes by so fast. So just try to enjoy like the whole day, the whole process. Like, just embrace it.
Yeah, and I mean, we've also heard stories too where it's like some people are waiting for like 8 to 10 hours to even step on that stage too. So it can be the longest day as well as the shortest day for so many people that we talk to. But now my favorite question: what is your go-to post-show meal?
Ooh, I would say sushi. I really, 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 really love sushi. And then I would either that or salmon. And everyone's like, "What the like? What is wrong with you? Like, sushi is not really a cheat, but it is to me because I don't know. I don't. I get like fun rolls and I get clean rolls, but I just like it. It digests well with me. I like it. I know that I can eat it. But salmon and then dessert. I'm a big dessert person. Like, I could probably, if you told me that I could have a cookie the size of my head, but I had to eat salad for like a week, I would do it. Like, I would be like, that's fine. I'll eat salad. Like, just vegetables, sure. But if I can have a cookie the size of my head, then I'm going to do it. Like, my husband's like the opposite. He's like, he'd rather have like steak, potato, burger, fries, but he's like dessert, like not really my thing. But I'm like, I have a sweet tooth, so
That must be an East Coast thing because I've heard so many of my guests from the East Coast that love sushi after a show. I mean, it's not insignificant. I've had at least probably about a dozen out of like the 400 or so that I've interviewed. And I'd say like 90% of those. I think there was only one person that wasn't from the East Coast that said that. So I don't know. Maybe there's a study that I need to do about that or something like that. But I mean, let's talk about post show blues because most people do not understand that look that you present on stage is not sustainable. You're not going to look like that 365 days out of the year, unfortunately. And I mean, a lot of people just don't realize that, and then they'll see bodybuilders in their off season, and then we'll get this comment a lot of like, like, oh, are you still competing? Like, are you done? Are you done now? And it's like that is probably the most demoralizing thing you can ever say to a bodybuilder is like, oh, are you done competing and stuff like that when they're,
yeah.
But how do you deal with that? Because like that's one of those things that like not a lot of people talk about, not a lot of people post about because it's so hard on people. And has it gotten easier for you as your career's gone on to sort of realize that like, hey, I need to put on weight after I'm done with these shows?
Yeah. It is tough. And I I think the hardest time I went through honestly was probably last year, which everyone is like, "Really? Because you've been doing this for so long, blah blah blah." But I don't know what it was exactly, but I think that because I was in prep for so long last year that I got so used to the way that I looked and the way that I felt, especially in like my clothes and everything, that as soon as I started to put on weight, I immediately like had a really hard time with like my mental state. And I had for the first time in a long time had to really, really, really fight to kind of knock out those voices. And my eating disorder like habits started to come back a little bit. And that was very scary for me. And it was scary because it was almost easy for me to kind of like want to go back into that mindset because I was like, that is a comfortable space for me. But thankfully I had my husband was he's a saint. I felt so bad for him. I was such a hot mess after my shows. He was like ready to kill me, but he was like, I love you and like you're gonna be fine. Like it's the first like 5 to 10 I'd say 5 to 8 pounds for any competitor, especially females, is always like such a tough weight to put on. But it's like once you get past that, like that kind of like threshold, you're all right. Like you're like, okay, like this is more normal for me. But yeah, he was so wonderful and so supportive, and he still is, but like he was so nice during that whole period of time and like very understanding. But it definitely, I don't think a lot of people do talk about it, and I don't really know why, because it's so common, and it's like you're not the only one that struggles with it. Like every single competitor goes through this. Male, female, first timer, a pro, doesn't matter. Like it's always hard. It doesn't matter like how many shows you've done. It doesn't matter how many times you've been in off season. It doesn't matter how much weight you gain. It's just a mental battle. Like it truly is. But once you get past kind of like, I'd say like 5 to 8 pounds, like you're kind of like, all right, like I'm fine. Like everything's fine. But I don't really know why it is so hard. Cause like we all know that it's necessary, because we all like logically know you cannot be 10% body fat, and you can't have striations in your shoulders, and you can't have like a 12 pack year round. So I think it just comes down to, I don't know, to find other avenues and other, I don't want to say hobbies, because bodybuilding is always going to be like your main priority, but like finding more things to do with your downtime. And I always tell friends, clients, people that ask, like, um, because you spend so much of your time in prep, like doing double cardio sessions, and you're in the gym a lot, and you're practicing your posing, and you're doing your, meal prep or whatever, and you're constantly kind of like going, and you always are doing something in prep, that when it comes to off season, when you don't have to do a million hours of cardio and you're training, you're still training really hard and you're still in the gym, but you're not in the gym 3 times a day, because you're not doing cardio and you're not doing all these things. So it's like finding things to do in your downtime and in your extra time. So I always tell people, like, pick up another hobby. It could be going to a dance class. It could be making sure you're going on more walks with your dog. Like it could be reading more. It could be going to school. It could like something that's going to like occupy that time, and something that's going to be like a healthy distraction for you. I think is a big factor into being able to deal with that post-show blues. Like, save me.
I mean, I've said this and I will say it until the day I die. The significant others of our guests are the unsung heroes of this podcast. So, everyone, they go through all the stuff that is behind the scenes and everything. But please, dear God, do not tell me that you and your husband have ever been on prep at the same time, because if that ever happened, I mean, I would have to call my parents and be like, you're going to have to babysit me for like the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, we actually met in prep.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I was in prep. I had just finished North Americans, and he was doing USAs, and I was going to do USAs too, but he came to nationals with me, and that's when I knew that he really liked me, because he was four weeks out from.
If he likes you in the skeleton face phase, then you know that it's true love, basically.
It is. It's very. I know. He's like, I don't understand why you don't like your face in off season. And I'm like, because it's like chubby. But he's like, but then you have like the skeleton, like, yeah. So I know. Yeah. So we both did USAs together, and then we both went into our off seasons together. But yeah, we both were in prep together at the same time.
Well, hey, I mean, more power to you. And I mean, being that you are, you work in the medical field. So what inspired you to become a nurse assistant? And what's that journey been like for you? Because I mean, I found that a lot of bodybuilders are actually like either nurses or doctors, or they're in the medical field. So it's kind of I don't know if it really influences it, but it does seem to be like a lot of them are practicing medicine in some way or another.
Yeah. So I had always been interested in the medical field. And my grandmother was a nurse, and she always kind of talked to me about that when I was younger and stuff. But I think the biggest thing for me was when I was in treatment, the people that I resonated with the most and the people that I liked the most were the people that were like real. And the ones that had been through a lot of in their life that were like able to connect with you, like those are the people that I was like, I like them. Because the thing that used to irritate me the most was when I had nurses or therapists or dietitians or whatever, like tell me things like, I know it's hard for you, but, and it's like, well, you actually don't because you've never had an eating disorder or
The
you've
worst is the ones that like I've talked to people where like you have a nurse that's like 300 pounds and they're like, I know what you're feeling. I was like, well, your body doesn't tell me that.
I had a dietitian that
That too, it's like, why the hell would I follow you? Like, that's whatever you say. Yeah.
and I felt really bad like thinking that in my head, but I'm sitting there and I'm like terrified to eat food. And she's sitting there telling me that I needed to eat these certain types of things and this is what I eat. And I'm sitting there going, well, I felt really bad, but I'm like, I'm terrified to gain weight. And like, you're telling me that these are the things that I need to eat, but you're overweight and I don't know. It was just tough for me to like sit there and listen to her, like try and give me advice on that. Cause I was like, that doesn't.
I have a friend that's a dietitian, and I would never wish to have that job because, like, yeah, if you want to be a successful one, you basically have to stay in shape year round, basically,
Yes,
because like no one's gonna ever want to listen to you if you're overweight.
no.
Yeah.
Same with personal training. Same with personal training. You can't. I mean, yeah, like when you're a bigger guy, like all the guys are like, "Oh, I want to look like you because you're a big dude." But like as a girl, like you don't want to ever be kind of like out of shape because nobody's gonna want to follow your advice. Yeah. So, but just having people that were like real, that were honest, that had been through some in their life, and that were healthy individuals, like those are the people that I was like I resonated with. So, and I've always wanted to help people. Like that's why I used to be a personal trainer for a long time, and that's why I got into that because I loved fitness. I love training. I wanted to help people. It kind of just meshed together, and it kind of goes hand in hand with like working as a nurse's assistant. Like I want to help people. I want to be, able to give that person that's struggling, whether it's struggling with diet, whether it's struggling with like a mental health issue, whether it's struggling with a health issue, like to tell them like, hey, I know that I might not have the exact same thing that you have, but I have been in the position of being stuck in a hospital bed before. I've been in the position of being terrified to make changes in my life too, but I did it. And if I can do it, you can do it. Like point blank. And I have patients tell me that all the time. Like they'll express to me that they're anxious about something or that they're having a hard time with something, and I'll kind of give them a very brief like backstory, and they're always like shocked because they're like, you're so young and like that's awful and blah blah blah. But it's like we all go through stuff. It's the people that are willing to put it out there that are the ones that are going to make the difference. Because you never know like how many people you're inspiring by just sharing a little bit of your story. It doesn't have to be the whole thing, but just being able to help like that one person or that 1% of people, like that's what I'm here for.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've always said that the nurses are they're the backbone because like let's be honest, nurses do 90% of the jobs, the doctors do the other 10%. It's ridiculous how like the doctors, oh yeah, you got to call me doctor, and so I never call a doctor I mean, I'll call him whatever, but like I have one of those annoying friends who was like, now they got my doctor, you have to call me a doctor, and I was like, I'm never gonna do that. Like, I'll just it's like let's be honest, you do 10% of the job. I've been to hospitals, I know nurses, they do so much more than any doctor ever does. It's like, oh yeah, fill me on this patient. Oh well, I've had to deal with them the last 2 days, and the doctor just showed. Yeah, so don't even get. That's a whole other tangent that I'll get into. But I mean, let's also be honest too. You're not the average looking woman. If you were to walk out in public dressed the way you are right now, you are gonna get stares just because it's human nature when they see something that's not of the normal. Just be like, oh wow, that's
Yeah.
fascinating. Has that been easy to deal with, or is it still one of those things where you look at it now and you're just like, okay, this is really weird? How like it's sort of like being a mini celebrity almost.
Um, it's weird. I don't even like pay attention to it in a sense, and I don't, and like it's not because I'm like not paying attention to people. It's just like I don't know. I think because maybe when I was sick, I did have a lot of people stare at me, probably because they were like, this person is like a skeleton. Like, how is her head? She has a bobblehead. Like, how is she holding herself up right now? So I think I just kind of dealt with that, and I just like learned to kind of keep my eyes forward and not really pay attention. But like my husband will say stuff like, he gets stared at a lot too. Like especially when he was in off season, he was up to like 280 pounds. And
Jesus.
yeah, and people would be like guys would stop him on the street. We were in Miami one time, and he had started to come down and like lose some weight, just because he wanted to feel better. And guys would stop him on the street and be like, "Yo, man, like you're huge. Like, how do you get so big? Like, what do you do?" And like, so I think we're just kind of accustomed to that. I do have like patients say stuff to me, especially now, like that I am in prep. Like almost every time I work, someone will say something to me like, "What do you do? What do you like? If you work out?"
That's when
Like
you respond, I've never lifted a weight in my entire life. I was just born like this.
I say stuff like I exercise. Like there was a few patients that actually like one guy was a bodybuilder when he was younger, and he was like, "You're really vascular. Like, do you compete?" And I was like, "Yeah." Like, so we talked about it. But like anyone that's not a competitor, I usually just say stuff like, "Oh yeah, I work out." Like I don't know. I don't really feel like talking about the whole story sometimes, so I'm like, "Yeah, I work out. Go for walks with my dog." Like
Oh yeah, I mean, when I was in really good shape, like in college, when I peaked, basically, I mean, I was, it would just be like, "What's working out? What's exercise?" I just say back to him and stuff like that. I was like,
yeah,
I'm just blessed. I have my vitamins. I do the Hulk Hogan thing. I eat, pray, and I take my vitamins. So yeah,
yeah,
there's that. But
exactly.
yeah, it is ridiculous some of the questions and comments that you'll get. I mean, it's like you got to be prepared when you walk outside, especially when you're in prep. But I mean, I hate cardio more than life itself. And when I say cardio, I mean actual running. I live close to nature parks, so I go on walks all the time. I'll be doing that later tonight. But what is your relationship with cardio like?
I actually enjoy cardio, and I don't know if it's because I come from a dance soccer background, so that was my sport. So like exercising, doing cardio, like that was like kind of like what I like to do. And I also think that part of it is a mental thing for me. Absolutely. I'm not gonna lie. Even in off season, my coach is always like, you don't need to do cardio that much, like blah blah blah. But I like to do cardio. Like it just sets me up for the day, gets my endorphins going. So I choose to do fasted cardio. I do not have to do fasted cardio, but I choose to do fasted cardio, even in off season, whether it's 20 minutes or whatever. I just like to get up. I go do my cardio. I come back. I'm in a good mood. Just sets the tone for the day. So I enjoy cardio. I really do. And everyone thinks that I'm out of my tree, but I don't mind it. Yeah, were there days in prep before that I was like, I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I went to the gym. I did my cardio. I trained. I went to work, and I worked from 7 in the morning to 7 at night, and had to go and do cardio at night. Absolutely happened a lot, but I was like, oh, this sucks. But I mean, it was like do or die. Like you do it or you don't. So but I definitely do have a positive relationship with cardio.
I mean, one of my two best friends from high school that I still keep in touch with, he runs marathons now, and I tell him, I was like, "You do realize that's a mental illness, right? Like what's going on with you? We can talk. We can talk. If you're really like that." But I mean, he does it, and he's taller than me too, so it's like I don't understand what's going on there. But I mean, sleep. Let's be completely honest. It's the hardest thing, especially when you're in prep. It's also the most important thing to keeping and staying healthy. I don't care what anyone says. Anyone disagrees with me on that, pull an all-nighter and then try to work out and tell me how that works out for you. But like you said, being a nurse, your hours can be absolute dog times. And I mean, I've heard stories from friends and stuff. How do you try to maintain at least somewhat of a decent sleep schedule? Because like for me, it's just amazing that you're able to be a nurse, you're married, and you're a bodybuilder. How you're able to maintain any semblance of any mental health whatsoever, doing all three of those at once.
Um, so sleep is the most crucial thing in bodybuilding, in life, but in bodybuilding. Anytime someone says to me, my weight is up, my digestion is off, whatever, I'm always like, how'd you sleep? Or how have you been sleeping? And when they're like, oh, not well, I'm like, all right, so this is what we're going to do. You're going to take a complete day off, period, of training, of cardio, whatever. Obviously, follow your meal plan, but go home tonight, take melatonin, take some sort of, yes, thank you, melatonin, St. John's wort, doesn't matter what it is, people that, use CBD, whatever, take a little bit of that, go to bed. I want you to try to sleep for like 10 hours, like not even joking. Wake up the next day, 9 times out of 10, they're like, I lost a pound and a half. Like, it's just, my body is very sensitive too. So like over the years, I've learned like more is not always the answer. And it's very hard for me to pull back. I'm in the current situation right now where we're pulling back on things a little bit, and I mentally am like, this doesn't seem right to me, but it's what I have to do. But sleep is like the number one most important thing. Like, I have to function sometimes off of like 5 hours of sleep because of the way that my work schedule is. But my days off, like, yes, I definitely go to bed. I try to go to bed as early as possible. I try to sleep in a little bit. Sleep is definitely the most crucial thing in the entire planet. And when I don't sleep enough, my body definitely pays a price for sure.
Well, thank God I'm not in the medical field, because if I was and I had to function off of 5 hours sleep, I would be so tempted to just take a bottle of coffee, put it in a syringe, and just inject it straight into my veins.
Oh, I drink coffee. Like, that's probably one of the bad things to tell people, but I definitely drink coffee way too much.
Well, as you can tell from my hyperactivity, for the safety of the public, I don't drink coffee because my head would probably explode. And, I don't, as we get close to wrapping things up here, I mean, if someone were to walk up to you and say, like, Tori, we made the decision, you can change one thing about the health and fitness lifestyle, and everyone would follow it, and, everyone would be forced to do it, what would be one thing that you'd want to see changed?
So one thing that I would change about bodybuilding industry or about,
Or you can do either or, but yeah, bodybuilding or just something else. Yeah.
so if I had to change something about the bodybuilding industry, I would definitely say people just like being real. Like, I feel like nowadays with like Instagram and like all of that stuff, and don't get me wrong, I use Instagram. I love Instagram. I think it's great. I think it's a wonderful tool. I think that it can definitely help, get you business. It can definitely get you sponsorships. It can connect you with different people. I think it's great. But it's like everyone wants to be the same person. And it's just like there's sometimes I scroll through Instagram and I literally am just like, what is happening? Like, why is everyone literally the same? Like, everyone's hair color is the same, everyone has the same clothes, everyone's promoting the same thing, everyone's talking about the same, and it's just like, when did the like when did that happen? Like, I'm like, I've always been told like to be my own person and to like have a mind of my own, and I'm so grateful that I haven't really lost myself. But and I like, people are like, oh, like, and don't get me wrong, like, you can wear whatever the hell you want to the gym. I don't care what you wear. You could wear
Well,
a
there's a limit, everyone, okay? Let's be honest. There are some things where it's like, okay, people, like, let's be honest here. I'm not going to get into detail, but everyone has seen that in the gym where they're like, okay, I'm all for wearing whatever you want, but it's like, come on, people.
yeah, and don't get me, like, there's definitely times where I'm like, I would never wear that, um like, I wear what I want to wear. I say what I want to say. I listen to what I want to listen to. I'm not going to like promote a brand or a company that I don't really back or that I find to be something that I actually utilize. But that's definitely the one thing that I would change about the bodybuilding industry is just like being an individual. Like, I don't know where we lost that. Like, I miss the bodybuilding days where you used to go to the gym and like actually train. Like, when did, like, now everyone has a tripod, everyone's trying to make a YouTube video, everyone's trying to make like, and don't get me, like, I have a YouTube channel. I did that for a bit. I want to get back into it. Yes, but like, I never wanted it to be like, I never wanted to be annoying about it. I never wanted to be not myself about it. I wanted to use it more of like a documentary series for people, especially people that wanted to get into bodybuilding, people that wanted to get um, into the health and wellness industry, like whatever. But so that's definitely the number one thing that I would change. In the medical field, the biggest thing that I would change if I could change it is actually teaching people how to eat properly, and that exercise and diet is like the most important thing, and it honestly can change 90% of the people's problems today. Like, not even joking, I see it every single day. I see diabetics. I see people who have like, um, who are overweight. I see people who are underweight. I see people who are smokers. I see people who are alcoholics. I see people who are very, very sick as well. But like, I also see people that it's like, you could change your diet for a few months and lose like 15 pounds and you would feel so much better and you would be off half of these medications that you don't actually need. Like pushing a drug and pushing medicine and pushing antibiotics on people before even addressing the fact that you're 60 pounds overweight and the reason why your knees hurt is because you are 60 pounds overweight. Like that's the type of stuff that I wish that we could change. And it goes far beyond the doctors and nurses in the hospital. It goes on to big pharma and everything. But I think just spreading awareness to people, like, you don't need to be taking that medicine. Like, you really don't. Like, if you just change your diet a little bit, you would probably feel better and you wouldn't need to take that because that medicine is now also causing you to have all of these other symptoms, which now you need to take all of these other medications. And it's just like a snowball effect. Like, the less amount of stuff that you can be on, the better.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree with you 100%. And when we do have you on a year from today, because I'd love to have you on and just share where you're at in your journey, where would you like to be at in your bodybuilding? Where would you like to be at just in your overall life? What are some goals that you'd like to have achieved by then?
Oh my goodness. Honestly, so I mean, I set a goal for myself and I haven't really said this out loud to anybody really besides like my husband and a few select people, but I have set a goal for myself. Um, that's basically saying if I don't turn pro by the time that I'm 30, and that's by the time that I'm about to turn 31. So I'm going to be 30 in September of this year. So I'm giving myself until the end of so I can turn 30 and then continue to compete. But if I don't turn 30 before I actually turn 31, I guess is the goal, then I am no longer going to be doing competitive bodybuilding. And that's not me saying that I'm never going to do bodybuilding ever again. That's just me saying that I'm not going to be chasing a pro card. Like I could still do it for fun. But I have just set that goal for myself for a couple different reasons. One, I do want to have a family one day. And I know that in order to do so, I need to be able to have my hormones and everything be regulated. And honestly, that probably takes about a year. And I want to be able to, have a family and be able to be 100,000% invested into my kids. And I'm not saying that anyone that competes and has kids is not. I'm just saying like that's just where I come from and that's where I stand. So I am giving myself that goal and kind of like, it's not a deadline. It's not like saying I'm never going to ever compete again. It's just me saying that if I'm not a pro by the time I'm 30, then I'm going to kind of back off a little bit and focus on that other aspect of my life. So besides that, if I am a pro by the time I'm 30, then I'm going to try and do a couple pro shows. But again, I don't want to compete and do that until I'm like 45 because I do want to have kids and do other things with my life. And bodybuilding, let's be honest, takes up a lot of that time. My husband and I talk about it a lot. Like we are both so used to like going on vacation and packing all of our food and all of our supplements and our scales and like all of that stuff because that's what we do. And we have neither.
Do people at the airport be like, "Are you guys drug traffickers or something like that? Why are you bringing scales and stuff?"
What are you doing? We're like, here's my frozen bag of chicken and like my food scale and like all this stuff. But every time we fly, we both like he gets searched every single time we fly because he brings his entire food bag with him. And they're like, what is this? Like, what are you doing? We're like, we're going on vacation and we have all of our stuff. Oh my God. But neither of us have ever been on a vacation where we have not packed our food. Like, so just doing stuff like that, like going on vacation and being like, we're going to go to an all-inclusive resort and we're obviously going to eat healthy, but we're not going to be like weighing our food. And like, I think that again, is something that I would also like to change about the bodybuilding industry is like, you can have a life too. Like, it doesn't have to be black or white. It doesn't have to be like, yes, when it comes to prep, absolutely. You can't have like, oh, I'm going to eyeball this or I'm going to like not do my cardio today or whatever. But when it comes to bodybuilding, the lifestyle, like it is a lifestyle. Like you don't have to be like crazy strict all the time. So I don't know. So anyways, like so another goal for myself is just um getting another like career, all of that stuff, like getting that stuff more situated. Because I am currently looking into other avenues of like careers and stuff. I mean, I do love the medical field. I think that it is definitely a big passion of mine, but I also do see the downsides of it. And it has definitely been extremely difficult, especially during the pandemic, on all of the healthcare workers and all of the first responders. And I don't think that they get the recognition and the stuff that they need. So I am looking into other career paths right now. I'm not going to make any type of like announcement, but I am looking into stuff like that. So just getting my career more situated, whether it's going back to school for medical, into the medical field, or going down the other career path that I am currently in between right now. So getting that more situated and, yeah, either hitting the pro stage or, balancing life a little bit more. And then maybe, who knows, I'll be telling you that I'm pregnant.
Either way, more than happy to talk to you again. You're one of those guests that you talk a lot, and I enjoy that. Those are my favorite kind of guests. The less that I have to talk, the better. I mean, my record, it still stands. It will never probably be topped. Is that I asked that person the first question of like, why don't you just give us your backstory? 28 minutes later, I was able to get in my next question. So that was probably, I mean, that was the greatest day of my life right there. But for that. But again, Tori, it was so great to have you on. Is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
Oh my goodness. If either of the people that got me into bodybuilding, Todd Hansen or Ted Curtin, are listening back at Hampstead Health and Fitness, I wanted to give them a big shout out because you literally saved my life. And then, of course, my husband, Frank, and my coach, Andrew Barry. You guys are my rocks and my ride or dies, and I appreciate you guys more than anything in this entire world. So, yeah.
And lastly, I saved this for the end here. Even I have this question to myself at least once every podcast. Why do these people do this to themselves? Why do they do it? I hear these prep stories and I'm just like, why? Like, what? I mean, and I understand it because, like I said, like I was on a prep for 4 weeks, so that means I've went through probably about 1% of what you guys have ever went through. So that means that I know. No, I'm just kidding. But like, it is just like it's one of those things where you hear about some of these stories and you're just like, why do they put themselves through it? Why do they do that? And I bet you still hear that to this day. So what is your why behind like why you subject yourself to this lifestyle?
Honestly, because I love it. And if I didn't love it, then I wouldn't do it. And I say it all the time because I have people ask me like, when are you going to be done? Like, when are you going to call it quits? Because you've been doing this for a long time and blah blah blah. But and my two answers back are, I'm the only one that will ever decide when I'm done competing. I will never have somebody tell me like, you can't compete anymore, you can't do it anymore. Whether doesn't matter who it is or what they say, it's not going to be a decision based off another person. It's going to be solely a decision based off of me. And it would come down to probably three factors. And one is my health. If I ever got told by anybody that, hey, you're not in a good spot, a doctor telling me like your blood work came back, things aren't looking good, I would absolutely stop competing. Absolutely. Second thing would be for kids, having kids. Like if I ever had a child and I felt like I wasn't able to give them 110%, then competing would definitely be over. And then career, like if I was putting myself into financial situations that I was like, because I see that a lot too, unfortunately. I see people posting things about like GoFundMe for my competition, but like one or the, you know what I mean? Like you have to be financially stable in order to compete. So if I ever got into a situation like that, I would no longer be able to compete, whether that was for a year or whatever, till I figured it out, or those would be the three reasons. But yeah, it's because I love it. And it's because I don't know. It's like, I know what you mean though, because it's like those people, you have to have some sort of like, I don't know. I think it's a drive or a hunger for something. And it's like very select few people have that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be just bodybuilding, because I feel like a lot of times the people that are very good bodybuilders are also very good like business people. They're very driven. They have a lot of things going on. They're very good at like juggling a lot of things. But it definitely is a very select few people.
Yes. Absolutely. I've always said, you can't be a Ned Flanders and be a bodybuilder. I mean, it's a certain personality type that you need to have, and it's great. But I mean, Tori, I cannot thank you enough for coming on and sharing your journey with us. I mean, it was an absolute delight, and I look forward to seeing where you're at, and I can't wait to talk to you again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really, really, really appreciate it. This was very cool.
Absolutely. Well, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing off. Have a great day, everyone.